So here's what I've learned this morning. First of all, I just learned that I missed 35 years of really important shit. And the second thing I learned is that we're all going to get naked later. So I think that's a big plus. And third, I guess I missed a good band last night. I guess this was awesome. What kind of band was it? It was a jazz. Oh, see, damn it. That's just awesome. So thank you guys for having me. So over the next half hour or so, what I'd like to do is sort of turn the lens a little bit toward marketing. And that's the lens I look through, as many of you know. And so talk a little bit about information, intelligent content, and certainly content marketing. Now, I want to get a gauge of the room here. How many people in here are actually in marketing? Okay, good. So now I'm going to just take a wild-ass guess that last presentation you were like, okay, that's cool, but what? Because that's my take on a lot of that. Okay, so, and how many of you that are content or information practitioners, and there's too many damn titles for me to remember, whether you're a document engineer or a content strategist or a content adaptive engineering technical person, how many of you are actually dealing more with marketing these days as part of your daily work? Okay, and then the rest of you just don't, you hide in your cubes with your red stapler, or is it... So this is something, so content, if you haven't noticed, is becoming a fairly large focus for marketing these days. It's a big piece of what we're doing, trying to create these things for driving value for the business. And so I didn't plan this. I didn't even know that this was going to be a thing to sort of get out of our comfort zones today, which I'm so glad that it was, but sort of in that spirit, we're going to talk about and think about for the next half hour big things today. We can go back to talking about XML and JavaScript and sort of how we code up pages to be more intelligent after this session. But we're going to talk about big business strategy things for the next half hour. And so I start with a question because I still had this question, which is, so what is information and why the hell does it need to be developed anyway? Because when Scott invited me to this event, it's like, okay, it's information. There's a whole world apparently devoted to information development. And so what is information and why the hell does it need to be developed? And so I did something that we all do when we determine that we have to figure out what the hell something means, is I went to the master of all things that will give me the answer. I went to Mothership Google and I typed in, and I started to type in why does information need to be, and then it started to fill in like it did. Now, this is fascinating. I want you to look. Accurate, reliable, and valid. These seems to be popular searches. That we need to figure out exactly why information needs to be accurate, reliable, or valid. And the top one there is managed, but I then typed in my own. I said, all right, well, let's put this into quotes because I need to make sure that I really understand this. Why does information need to be developed? And I got no results. There's absolutely no results for that. So I remembered, I went, okay, goodness gracious, the managed was the top one there, so I'll start there. Maybe I'll just start there. And I typed in, so why does information need to be managed? And I come up with a few different results there. As you can see there, there's the information technology in business, the big picture, there's the standards of development, blah, 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 blah. And I went, ugh. So now let's look at look at this. Why information needs to be managed? Well, there's this link, information management, Wikipedia. Hey, Wikipedia will have the answer for me. Why information needs to get developed. So I click on that. And the first thing I get is information management, not to be confused with content management or knowledge management. Okay, well, I'm immediately put off, but okay, so let's read this. Information management concerns a cycle of organizational, and they spell it with an S, so it's clearly a UK guy wrote this, all right. So, organizational activity, the acquisition of information sources, the custodianship, and the blah, 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 the way more big words than we need, and it doesn't answer my question. So I'm like, shit, I need to answer this question. So I go, where am I going to go now? I go to Siri, because Siri will answer my question for me. And I say, Siri, why does information need to be developed? And Siri comes back and says, well, here's what I found on the web for you. And it's a bunch of different links than I actually found on Google. And one of them is this developed country. So I go look at that article. And it's an article on how countries are being developed, and information is a big piece of that. And of course, now there's this article, a piece of that article is about Cuba and how Cuba is coming along as one of the more developed countries. And I'm like, that's interesting. I'm starting to lose my interest now in information. And I'm actually getting kind of hungry for a Cuban sandwich. And so I actually then go to Wikipedia because I think I'll make myself a Cuban sandwich. And I start looking at the ingredients and I go, I don't have any of that at the house, so where can I get a Cuban restaurant? Well, let's just ask Siri where I can get a Cuban restaurant. And apparently there's one like 8 miles from my house. So I say, great, Siri, show me the way to the Cuban restaurant called Versailles. And then, of course, they show me the way. And along the way, as I'm driving there, I figure, maybe I should just go check out the Information Development World website and see what the website says and what Scott and Val say. And the line there, the tagline sort of resonated with me, and it has been supported by everything I've heard this morning in today's talks, which is remarkable customer experiences. And that's a really interesting thing. But then my mind was blown because really when I think about it, information needs to be developed for why information needs to be developed, which is lovely and recursive and all of that wonderful stuff. But so if you're like, why doesn't somebody write an article as a sort of an output of today's event? But here is really it. It's creating exceptional customer experiences, because everything that Bob talked about in his talk, in terms of the value of intelligent content and the value of everything has changed and nothing has changed, is at the end of that is some sort of better customer experience, whether it's a better textbook, whether it's a better travel experience. What Lisa talked about is really the governance around creating something that drives an exceptional customer experience. And that's something I can get my head around. And as I go out and I start talking with content practitioners, marketers, and how those worlds are colliding every single day, the thing that I keep coming back to is how strategic content is today. Content is what we are in business. It is what we are today, and getting strategic about it. And so just to show a hand, so for those of you in marketing or for those of you in content practitioners, how many of you believe that content and or information development should be a C-level position in the business? There's a lot of hands going up. And that's, I think, the future. Because I believe that as a business manages content, the more strategic and differentiated it becomes. And that's an incredible thing, because it's not the way that it is in business right now. And so for those of you who are in marketing, and for those of you who aren't in marketing but are starting to deal a little bit more with marketing, I'm going to let you in on a little bit of a secret. If you can figure out the biggest secret in marketing right now, if you can solve this, you will be the hero of the business. You will absolutely be the hero of the business. And that secret is, can you measure content's contribution to the business? Because guess what? Nobody can right now. Nobody can measure content's contribution to the business. And especially, and as we look through the lens of marketing, especially through marketing. We do a study, Content Marketing Institute does a study every single year where we look, and we just released our 2016, what we call our 2016 results, but we just finished the results. Our 2015 came out in 2014, and so on and so forth. Every year it's the same thing. 86%, 87%, 90% of businesses are doing content for some sort of marketing purpose, to create some sort of marketing effect. 30% feel good about it, feel like it can be measured. And so the gap there is, how do we actually measure it? How do we actually start to look at it? We have to change. The business has to change. Certainly it has to get more intelligent about the way that it manages content. And that's what you've heard all sorts of wonderful talks on today, and I'm sure yesterday. But another thing that fundamentally has to change is the way that we treat content in marketing. And so the guide that you see up on the screen right now said this in a really remarkable way. And I tee this up because it's just one of my favorite things out there, because it's such a tasty metaphor for where we are with marketing, with content, and the business right now. So this is 1997, and Steve Jobs has just come back to Apple. He's been in exile for 7 years, and he's literally just come back a month ago. And so he goes to the Worldwide Developer Conference, and he hosts an impromptu Ask Me Anything session, where anybody can ask him anything they like. He's not even CEO again here. He's just a quote-unquote consultant to the company. But he will soon become the new CEO, of course, or the returning CEO, as it were. And so this is his answer to a question. And on the back end of it, this is what to me is sort of just a great metaphor for where we are with marketing right now and where we are with the use of content.
Thanks. Yes.
Volume for that.
Mr. Jobs, you're a bright and influential man.
Here it comes.
It's sad and clear that on several counts you've discussed, you don't know what you're talking about. I would like, for example, for you to express in clear terms how, say, Java, in any of its incarnations, addresses the ideas embodied in OpenDoc. And when you're finished with that, perhaps you could tell us what you personally have been doing for the last 7 years.
You know, you can please some of the people some of the time, but one of the hardest things when you're trying to affect change is that people like this gentleman are right in some areas. I'm sure that there are some things OpenDoc does, probably even more that I'm not familiar with, that nothing else out there does. And I'm sure that you can make some demos, maybe a small commercial app that demonstrates those things. The hardest thing is, how does that fit in to a cohesive, larger vision that's going to allow you to sell $8 billion, $10 billion of product a year? And one of the things I've always found is that you've got to start with the customer experience and work backwards to the technology. You can't start with the technology and try to figure out where you're going to try to sell it. And I've made this mistake probably more than anybody else in this room. And I've got the scar tissue to prove it. And I know that it's the case. And as we have tried to come up with a strategy and a vision for Apple, it started with what incredible benefits can we give to the customer? Where can we take the customer? Not starting with, let's sit down with the engineers and figure out what awesome technology we have, and then how are we going to market that. And I think that's the right path to take.
The reason I love that so much is because it reflects so much of what I see in business today. The way that the cadence of content becomes, well, when should we send out the white paper? Well, when it's done, of course. Everything we do from a content perspective, when should we publish? Well, when it's finished. We finish content and it immediately goes out onto the website. Or we finish a marketing campaign and it immediately goes out. And we basically look from this inside looking out of, let's create some content about what we want to say and figure out how to market it to the user. Figure out how to sort of communicate that to the user instead of starting with something fundamentally different, which is, what is the benefit to the customer? And so I start with a question which is fundamental in its nature in terms of marketing. So what is marketing? What are we actually talking about when we talk about the benefits of marketing? And to do that, I'm going to introduce you to a guy, because I'm going to come back to that, and this is the piece that you can take back to your businesses, is getting back to the roots. I love the sort of historical perspective that both of the previous speakers gave, and I'm going to give another one, which is how we can get back to the roots and the value of marketing. Introduce you to a guy by the name of Art Shaw. Art Shaw was a publisher. And he was also an entrepreneur. He was also the first marketing professor, although they didn't call him that, the business professor at the Harvard Business School. He started a little publication called the Harvard Business Review, and he was the first editor of the Harvard Business Review. He was also a publisher in the sense that he was his first foray into marketing, to sell his office supply store, was to create content, to create a magazine. And he created a magazine called System, the Magazine of Business. And this magazine was really driven a marketing platform for him to sell what he was creating at that point, which was office furniture and office supplies and office sort of things to equip your office with. And so he talked about the trends that were going on in business and what was happening in the best practices and the way that you would manage business. Quick side note, he had a writer writing for him named Edgar Rice Burroughs, who loved to write business content so much that he quit after a month and said, I'm never writing this shit again, and I'm going to go off and create this character called Tarzan. But what he did was he created all kinds of educational materials. He turned his business, his office supply business, into a publishing business, where he published System, the magazine of business, and he also published books on the way to do best-selling of the way to go to market with sales, how to do the business trends, how to understand research, all these kinds of things that helped him sell more office supplies. Ultimately, when he retired, that magazine was so successful, it was bought by McGraw-Hill, renamed The Business Week, or 100 and some odd years later, a magazine that we might be a little more familiar with. And so that has lasted. And so the marketing really started with content. Now, really, when we start talking about Art Shaw, one of the first things, and he's one of the first marketing practitioners out there that sort of talked about the practice of marketing, early 1900s at Harvard Business School. And he said the value of marketing to the business, the value was what he called the marketing utilities, and there were 4 of them. One was physical utility, supplying inputs into the production process. How do we actually supply input into the production process of what we're making so that it actually makes the thing we're making better? That was one utility. Second utility was called insight utility. Insight utility was research into the marketplace, what we would call market research today, to help decide the attributes of the product that we would put into the marketplace. How would we sort of move things around? Where should we be selling? To whom should we be selling? What features do they value the most? Then there's time utility, which is the one that we're most familiar with marketing, which is shortening the time between a product to the time it's finished to the time that it gets into a customer's hands. What promotional and planning capabilities would we be able to add to the business value to provide that value to the business? And finally, possession utility. Once a customer purchases our product, how do we deliver them transactions that help them use those products for their intended or desired purposes? How do we actually make them more satisfied with? Those were the 4 utilities that he came up with, 4 values of marketing. We have sadly lost most of those in marketing. Marketing is mostly focused on one specific business purpose, which is the time utility, and failing rather miserably in most cases at it. In other words, we're building value. Marketers are trying to build value. Now, the interesting thing is that if we sort of look at this in today's sort of language, we can look at physical value, which is using better data to produce better products. We've got that capability today. Or we look at insight. How do we use data to understand the personas or the people that we're trying to deliver that value to? How do we use the insight and the consumption of content to understand how we deliver and to whom we deliver? Time, how do we actually get better at shortening that time and distance between the product and the consumer? And then finally, possession, what Jay Baer might call utility content, delivering content so great to customers that they become evangelical and they want to share our story across all the social platforms that we'll never have the ability to be on, deriving such value and such wonderful that they stay longer, that they are loyal. They're creating value, not just describing it. Marketers are really good these days at describing value. We're great at describing value. We got unique value propositions, unique sales propositions. We got features, we got benefits, we got reasons to believe. We put adjectives in front of nouns like nobody's business. We are the synergistic, top-leading, blah, 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 blah. I often challenge marketers. I'll say, take out all the adjectives and adverbs from your press release boilerplate and see what you got. And it's usually like, we do stuff. And so we're creating value through the use of content. Content serves every single one of these goals. But it is rare that we actually use content to serve all of those goals. Rich customer experiences are what the business generates these days. And content can be at the heart of it. So what is the value? When we look at it, when we start talking about great content marketing or content-driven experiences out there, what is the value of Food and Family Network, or Food and Family Magazine, rather, that Kraft puts out? It's a print magazine that is also translated intelligently into their online Kraft databases, recipes database. 3.5 million subscribers to the magazine. 3.5 million opt-in subscribers. They have more audience than the Food TV network does. It makes more sense for Food TV network to advertise with Kraft than it does the other way around. But they create value. People pay money to receive the Kraft magazine. They pay real dollars for the Kraft magazine to arrive at their doorstep every month. Real dollars, revenue. But what is the value of that from a data perspective? Or Red Bull Media House with their 12 different content brands and the amount of content that they produce, their TV network, their documentary series, their feature films. What is the value of that to the business? How does that add value to the bottom line? Does it? Or AdobeCMO.com with 18,000 CMOs in their database, addressable audience. Is that audience valuable? Do they have a valuable asset? Something that could be looked at as a valuable asset on the spreadsheet? Or how about we look at Robert Half, their salary guide, which gets produced every single year and has for decades, 3.5 million downloads of that every single year that they put it out. Is that a valuable media asset? Could it be its own media company or research company if it was spun out on its own? How about Content Marketing Institute? I actually know the value of Content Marketing Institute, and I can tell you it's high. And creating content for marketing's purposes and creating a category of marketing that we can evangelize about and help businesses become operational, it's valuable. How about the value of the Blend Tech? By the way, if you haven't seen the one with Shia LaBeouf going, just do it. It's awesome. Just YouTube that. But what the Blend Tech video series, which started out as a lark and is now one of the most popular, most viral, is that an asset? Is that a media asset in the company? How about Jyske Bank? Jyske Bank in Denmark has repositioned. They will tell you themselves that they are a media company that also happens to be a retail bank. They have completely reformatted what it means to be a bank. When you go into a Jyske Bank now, it is like a coffee shop. They have chairs, they have people walking around in casual clothes, no more thick glass. It is completely casual, and all the bankers basically walk around as consultants to help you get financially literate, to teach you how to balance a checkbook, to teach you what credit card interest rates are like. And the 24/7 broadcast media studio that they maintain and broadcast content 24/7, 365 days a year is focused on education, educating people as to how how financial literacy can help them. And they also happen to be a retail bank. Or how about Indium? Indium has 14 different languages for their 70 different blogs at this point, engineer to engineer, where they're talking about all of the different flavors of solder. Who knew there were different flavors of solder? But there are. And they're actually producing this in 14 different languages now because they are now the top leading brand, media brand, in the soldering space. And it has produced 700% more leads in the process. What is the value of that content, that media asset? It's starting to happen. Surf Stitch, which is a company in Australia, just bought the Stab and Magic Seaweed, which were publications, magazines, online magazines, to call what the CMO called a content network with a retail business. They do about 2 million visitors combined, or about what Kraft Food and Family online database does. So is that valuable? They bought it for $14 million. Or how about the other way around? Thrillist acquired Jack's Threads. This is a publisher acquiring the e-commerce site, understanding that content integrated into e-commerce drives a value. And so if we start looking at this and how content, each and every single time you hear at any content marketing conference you go to, every time you hear about a valuable content property, it is not the blog, it is not the webinar, it is not the white paper, it is the collection of assets that provides the value, not any one of them in it. It is the collection of assets, not a singular blog, not a singular white paper, not any singular content asset. But yet that's how we think. So what needs to change? What do we need to change to think? Because this is how it works today in most businesses. Maybe this will resonate a little bit with you in terms of how your marketing department operates. We start with a timeline, like most marketing departments do. We start with 4 quarters and we say, here's our 4th quarter. And basically we have this thing we call marketing. And the thing we call marketing is happening, and it's got campaigns, and it needs to drive leads, and it drives to lead better customers and all that kind of stuff. And we're going to do this thing called content to support that. Maybe we'll even call it content marketing. And the way it works is they'll say, we have a campaign and we need assets. And the content people will go, great, we can produce assets for you. We have a white paper thing we can write. I was tasked by my boss to do 4 of them this year, so great, that works out well. And so I'll create a white paper for you. We'll create this kind of webinar-y series thing, and then we'll also do a blog post because we got to do blog posts. Blog posts are like mandatory. Great, okay. Well, second quarter comes along and they say, we have a site redesign. And the content people go, great, more assets. Okay, so we'll create this interview with the CEO because there's going to be an event. We can video him, and he's kind of arrogant, and so he wants his video thing. Okay, we'll do that. Then I have to do my second white paper. More blogs, please. Okay, so we'll do a couple of blog posts. Great. And then the third quarter comes along. We have our second major campaign, and we say more assets. And so the content people go, okay, let's see. Oh, the third white paper, of course. We've got to do that. Then more blog posts. Okay, we'll do a couple of blog posts. And then we'll do this weird little calculator thing because I've got a little budget and I can hire an agency to create this ROI calculator thing. So that'll be a cool asset. And then the fourth quarter comes along and it's like, shit, now I have another white paper I have to write. So I'm going to do 2 because I'm going to try and big my bonus this year. And then we have more blog posts. We have to do more blog posts. And now we're going to do this email thing. We'll do an email asset. And that'll be awesome. And that's how we manage content over the course of a year. And what happens? 1 year later, we have a disconnected pile of assets. Some of them are pretty good. Some of them suck. That third white paper we did really blew. But some of it's okay, but none of it is connected and we can't measure it. And why can't we measure it? Because it's not a program. It's nothing. It's just a disconnected pile of assets that we create on demand. And that's the way many businesses are creating this. And what we do to try and make ourselves feel better is we pour them all into a resource center that's neither a resource nor a center of anything. And so we pour it in there and we say, yay, here's our resource center. Our resource center is really awesome. By law, you have to have some guy leaning back, relaxed in his chair. You have to do that. The sales guys are going to say, okay, you got to have a request a quote on there because it's not marketing unless you have a request a quote on there. We're totes awesome, right? We're the experts. And then we have white papers. We got like 9 of them. They're all thought leadery and stuff. And we have like webinars, and you can bet if you watch one of these webinars, you're going to get a call from a sales guy. You can bet that. And then the third one, we have this link to the social media networks. Why do we have a link to the social media networks? We don't know, but the social people will be really pissed if we don't put the social media links there. And we got to do it in orange because they really like orange. And then because we're like getting intelligent with RSS feeds and stuff, we're going to put a blog thing in there. And we'll talk about our blog and how our new VP has been hired and our company picnic and all that kind of stuff. Yay! What is that? That's a mess of nothing. But this is the way we organize content. This is what we think of as this is our resource center. It's resourceful. And this has to change because it leaves us asking these questions. Gated or ungated? Should we gate or ungate our assets? If we're asking ourselves if we should gate or ungate assets, we do not have a strategy. We have a disconnected pile of assets that we're trying to figure out, well, which one of these are worth gating? No. We're saying, what's the blog? Why do we have a blog again? What's the social media? Why do we have social media? Is anything working? What's the ROI? This is where it leaves us. Instead, can we change? Can we lead? Can we create the show that never ends? Can we create media products? Can we shift our mindset in marketing and content creation and content management to create assets that are worth investing in? What if we begin with an amazing experience in mind? What if we take Steve Jobs' advice and we start with the remarkable experience the deep value we're trying to deliver to the customer, and we start the most amazing resource center? The question I'll ask a B2B organization that has a resource center, I'll say, if somebody goes in and reads every piece of content in your resource center, how will they be a better person other than very sleepy? Or the most emotional story we can tell. What is the most emotional story we can tell in an online magazine or in a book or in a movie or in a series of movies or a series? What are the industry-leading most useful tools? Can we create this thing, this experience? Can we create a collection of assets and then create a multi-measurable strategy to achieve it? So if we start at the end, this amazing experience, we architect this wonderful media product, this experience, and then we work backwards. and we say, what are the big rocks? What are the critical things that we have to get, whether you like Agile or Lean Startup or whatever your methodology is, what do we need to get to minimum viable product? And how long will it take us to get there? Is it going to take us a year? Maybe. Take us 18 months? Maybe. How long will it take us to get there? What are the critical pieces that once it's in there, it has reached its minimum viable product status? And then, what are all the little things that we could do around that, these major releases? The webinars, the blog posts. We can architect that. We can architect the infographics and all the things that might surround those things and fill our editorial strategy. And then, yes, of course, marketing. Of course, marketing. We have to support marketing ongoing. It has to be a core piece of what we do. But if you create those big rocks and they are truly valuable for your customer, I guarantee you they make amazing direct marketing assets. And then, if even then the sales or the demand generation people or all the people who are focused on the demand generation side, the marketing side, they go, yeah, but it doesn't have enough sale, it doesn't have enough call to action, it doesn't have enough, they'll throw in some marketing buzzword there. You go, great, we'll create special ones just for you. Special versions of these assets just to support your campaign effort. And we're not going to lose sight of our bigger vision, the thing that we're building, the wall, the house, the castle, whatever metaphor you like, the thing that we're building that's going to add value. Then we can go back to our roots and the 4 pillars of value as taught to us by Art Shaw, and we can start to measure this as something worth investing in. Campaign ROI, absolutely. These assets can support better customers, more leads, more faster through the pipeline, better ASP, or data, insights. Data insights into the persona, into the audience, into a better customer segmentation strategy, into actually having data worth managing. Customer ROI, possession, do they stay longer? Are they more likely to share their story? Do they tell a friend? All those kinds of things. All the way to business ROI, physical ROI. Can we actually even charge money for it? One of the things that I commonly say to somebody said, well, should we gate or ungate? It's like, you shouldn't have to ask yourself that question. If the content you're creating is good enough, people will subscribe. Do this as a test. Put the content out for free, and if it's good enough, people will fill the form out after they've read it. That's the goal, is that they want to subscribe after they've read the gated asset. And so that should be our goal with all of this, is can we create content that is so wonderful that people want to subscribe to more of it? Not that they feel like they have to pay you something to get it. They want to subscribe to it. Is it possible? Absolutely. So here's Kraft, right? Coming back to Kraft. And their food and family print magazine, as well as intelligently managed online Kraft recipes. So yes, campaign time. They measure things like the anonymous visitors and how many coupons they actually click on and redeem. So they can actually tell you how many of their anonymous visitors ultimately end up redeeming coupons. And then, of course, they can track those coupons to redemption. So they have a number for that. Or they can look at themselves as the most effective publisher. They're not the biggest publisher that the brand managers that are managing Kraft macaroni and cheese and all those things are using to when they place advertising. But when they do, their focus of audience is the most effective ad click-through and other types of click-through and shopping that they have. They are the most focused, best publication for advertising. Or programmatic advertising. Of course they're doing programmatic advertising across multiple channels in YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn and retargeting networks and all those things. They're using the data of the content consumption that comes from the online database to programmatically serve more targeted ads, which is driving down their media costs. That's a real value. Customer ROI, possession. They can actually measure loyalty. They can look at the subscribers, the ones who are not only getting the magazine, but the ones who subscribe online, and they can see, are they return buyers? Are they return shoppers? They can give that information to the grocery stores and say, is this somebody that's returning and buying more product? Data insight, first-party research. They have better research on their customers with 3.5 million opt-in subscribers. They've got better first-party research than any research company on the planet. If they want to know what moms in Northeastern Ohio think about cheese, or they want to know what dads and families think about something going on in Florida or the Western United States, they've got better research. So their brand managers have stopped buying research from research companies, saving them hundreds of thousands of dollars every year in research cost. Or business ROI, revenue. This is a marketing program that pays for itself. It pays for itself. It got revenue because the content is good enough. Or how about a B2B example? A B2B example, Campaign ROI. It's a real example of a company, a software company, that put together an online education platform where the content was intelligently managed, published across multiple platforms, but primarily an online platform where they're getting instant marketing database. I'll go into a B2B organization, I'll say, what's your marketing database look like? Well, we have 20,000 in our list. It's really just 20,000 emails. We don't know how good it is. Wow, what if we could extend that? And we actually knew their names, their phone numbers, their titles, their addresses, because the content was good enough that they wanted to subscribe to it. They have a database now that provides them with 2x faster things when they upgrade a product and want to market it, or when they introduce a new product. They have an instant database to go out to and say, people who want to hear from them, that provides them, yes, I need the upgrade. Yes, I need this, because they have an audience worth marketing to. Paid media, 25% improvement in the effectiveness of their ad buys based on the data that they can use to reprogrammatically serve out those ads in a better media. So Google searches and other types of Facebook or LinkedIn ad buys. Data append, where they're appending the data, they're getting more valuable and more valuable data over time, building, progressively profiling customer profiles so that they actually have the industry-leading database on their particular market. Or increased loyalty. They've actually got increased loyalty with a 5x% increase to the subscription of the software because of this online education piece. It's adding value to the experience of owning and working with the software by providing them reasons to believe about why they should be doing it, and ultimately customer or business ROI around the attendance at regional events. They want to do regional education events. Now they know not only where they should have them because they know where the focus is for their audience, but two, they're not sending spam out to all 70,000 people. They're sending out the Atlanta invitation only to people who live in Atlanta, only to people who live in California, et cetera, et cetera. It's a huge value. It's multiple values. I was talking with a CEO the other day, and I said, think of it this way. Think of it this way. I said, can you for a minute imagine we can create a content property, something that is so valuable that your people, the customers you serve, would want to subscribe to it? He said, yeah, I think I can. Great. Let's assume that that's 15,000 people over the course of the year. And he said, okay. I said, of those 15,000 people that you build in that want to subscribe, not just giving over their data to get something, but actually want to subscribe, are engaged in the ongoing show, the ongoing content, not just transactional, but want to engage in your media product. Of those 15,000, in any given month or any given quarter, a very small percentage of them are going to raise their hand and want to be leads. And he said, yes, I agree with that. I said, let's say it's 5%. Let's say it's 5% of those people. That's a very small number, but that's a valuable number because that's a better lead. It's a more engaged lead. All marketing people, the campaign people will love that. Awesome. That doesn't mean that the 90 or 95% aren't valuable. They provide all those other values that we can start to plug in. We can start to test messaging with them. We can start to test, send them polls to say, what product features would you like to see in a new product? We can start to do regional events. We can start to look at that audience and see if our paid media is actually giving us the C-level people that we're targeting. And we can start to test and see of our data segmentation program, is it working? Are we actually building data over time, or actually are we just doing transactions? The content media product can provide multiple lines of value to the business if we can create it in the right way. So to leave you with something, I'll leave you with just 4 takeaways. One is simply developing collateral is basically, instead of developing a vision, you will fail at both. You'll fail at marketing and demand generation with content, and you'll fail in content marketing, because right now content in so many ways is just an alternative form of collateral for sales. And we've got to get beyond that. We have to change that. We can lead that into a show that never ends. 2, we need to take that vision and work backwards. The data thing won't happen until we actually have that minimum viable product. That's okay. That value can come later. We can work backwards and figure out, of the 4 multiple lines of value, where can we introduce each one? It might be for the 6 or 7 or 8 months that we're building this thing, as we're building the big rocks that will make up our expression, our media product, that campaign value, time to value, is the only value we provide. But once we get there, once we get to that 10,000 database, or we get to that big audience that we're trying to build, we can start to build in the other stuff. We can time that out. We can look at it in a timeline if we work backwards from the ultimate expression of what we're trying to build. 3, we can develop then our plan of priority. We can build a business case for why content should be managed intelligently in this, why we should be capturing data in this particular way, why we shouldn't ask for address until we actually do phase 2, why all of these things we can start to prioritize and understand when and where we'll build the value. It gives us the content editorial strategy and the data capture strategy, always keeping the short-term campaign in mind, but not without losing the big business vision, because we'll lastly integrate with campaign marketing. Integrate. Make it better. Not only create a more effective marketing spend, but create something that's actually worth investing in, the true definition of return on investment, where we're investing something that over time is going to give us an increased return on that money spent. That's the true investing, the true ROI of content. Marketing, campaign-based marketing, is simply just an effectiveness of spend. Can we get more for the same money that we're trying to spend in time? If information is just collateral supporting campaign marketing, we're going to fail at both. So why should information be developed? I sort of come back to that question. Why should information be developed? One of my marketing heroes, Philip Kotler, who wrote many, many books, Kotler on Marketing is a great one if you want to read one. He talks about the idea that marketing is ultimately not the art of finding clever ways to dispose of what you make, which is very often the way we think of content. How can we just get this content out? How can we just get this product out? It is not the art of just disposing of what we make. It is the art of creating genuine customer value. And giant bobble-headed me says that information is the key ingredient to content show that never ends. An exceptional customer experience. And that's what, if I've learned anything today in the previous keynotes, that's what it's all about. An exceptional customer experience. One that's better than the one you had before or the one our competitor makes. And that's the competitive leader, why I think content is a business strategy. It's a holistic business strategy. And developed well, it is the best multiplier of creating genuine customer value. With that, I would say let's go create the future of business together. I would thank you for your time. 7theraofmarketing.com is the book if you didn't feel like taking notes or you want more information on that. And thank you so much. I hope you have a great day. And naked.